Hello. My phone gave my reminder notice right when I went live. If any of you remember The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, which was like the most popular game in 1997 or 8 or whenever it was, I use the annoying Navi voice as my reminder because I won't miss it. Welcome to the This Is Not Therapy Hour. I'm Brandon Testers. I am a licensed therapist, but this is not therapy for so very, very many reasons. I run a practice called Effective Artistry that does therapy and executive functioning coaching. We have a particular specialization in working with people who consider themselves to be neurodivergent, people who struggle with executive functioning, and people who consider themselves to be creative, and, everything else too. I don't know. I may have someone join me today. I was talking with a friend of mine, Lindsay Wold, who may join in, and if so, great. If not, it'll be just me again. And these things are kind of, it's a bit of like an endurance challenge when it's just me, just talk for an hour, which, I like, but it's a fun challenge. Today, we're going to start, as we usually have a topic. Today's topic is resolutions, New Year's resolutions. Oh yeah, Happy New Year to everybody. And just a quick reminder for everybody that if you're here watching, I'm glad that you're here. If you also want to be in the chat, I would love that. This is intended to be an open conversation. So even though I pick a topic, resolutions in this case, we'll go wherever the conversation goes. That's how communication works. So anybody who's here in the chat, feel free to ask questions, respond to things, whatever. Tell me that you think my hair is getting too long. That's fine. I'll cry, but it's all right. It's good to know how people think. So we'll start by talking about resolutions, but please chat. It will make me feel like I'm not here alone. It'll be nice. If you're on Twitch, in the chat, it'll be your Twitch username. If you're on YouTube, it'll be your Google account. If you're on Facebook, it'll be your Facebook account. Keep that in mind. I try not to call out anybody's names from the chat just in case. But you can always either go to Twitch and create an anonymous account or create a burner on YouTube or Facebook or whatever to use there if that's a concern for you. I think that's about it. Okay. So, New Year, new you. That feels like something that's probably in a lot of advertisements for like gyms and things. I don't feel like I've ever I can't like remember specifically seeing that. Advertisers, if you haven't used it yet, you can have it free of charge. New Year. No, somebody mentioned to me, one of our coaches, actually, Sarah Geis, mentioned that a lot of her clients are talking about New Year's resolutions and suggested this topic. And it can just go in so many different directions. What I want to talk about for sure is quote unquote goal setting. Actually, I don't like to talk about it as goal setting, but we'll talk about that. And if things go this way and there's time to get to it, I kind of thought it would be interesting to talk about why we do this, why at the new year we have a tendency to set resolutions, and not just at the new year, but generally at like specific markers that we build off of time specifically. Oh, it is now time for blank. And why our intentions don't always work out when we're focused on time and not other things. But let's start with the big one, quote unquote goal setting. Because I talked about goal setting for a long time. Obviously, it's an important thing. Self-evidently, it's an important and helpful and useful thing. Also, it is a problematic thing. It causes difficulties when people set goals that they don't reach. It creates hesitation in people to set goals for things if they're worried that they won't reach it. How many people set the same intention, the same New Year's resolution every year of, I'm going to get in shape this year, or I'm going to make a budget and stick to it, and fail. I mean, that's the joke, right? Like, nobody mentions New Year's resolutions without immediately following that up with a joke about, and they'll all be abandoned by February or March. And yet the next year we try the same thing again. So there are things here that are important to us, obviously, and there's reasons that we set those goals, but it doesn't always work out that way. And it looks like Lindsay is joining, but she might be joining momentarily. So it'll be good to welcome her into the conversation. I'll say, well, let me give a bit of info about Lindsay just in case she does join, and then we can kind of get back on topic in that way. she'll be more plugged in with exactly where we are in the conversation. Lindsey Wold is a friend of mine we met. She runs a company called Amygdala Co, and she can talk more about that as well. But she's the CEO of Amygdala Co. She has her bachelor's from University of Missouri St. Louis and a master's degree from Washington University in applied behavioral health research. She was a researcher primarily, conducted family research on childhood externalizing behaviors. I'm reading the written bio here, i.e. anxiety, ADHD, yelling, etc., utilizing fMRI and EEG sequences alongside researchers mapping the human brain ages 3 to 65. During her stay at UMSL and WashU, she was also a member of teams studying the neurological differences in twins who were sexually abused as children, neurological differences in marijuana users, circadian rhythm, human reading, and psychopharmacology. She's passionate about children's brain development, human cognition, and the dissemination of effective evidence-based solutions in our communities. So now when she joins, you'll have an idea of who that is. Cecil is also here kind of operating things in the background, and I'm assuming can communicate with her to help her figure out how to join. So, excuse me, back to goal setting. So I now talk about, and I feel terrible about this because I learned this from somebody posted it on Twitter, and I don't remember who. I need to be better about, I don't remember anyway, talking about aims instead of goals. Goal is a binary thing. You either achieve or don't achieve the goal. You succeed or you fail, right? Whereas an aim is, this is what I'm going for, but if I miss what I'm aiming at, it's not a failure, it's just, I didn't quite get there. Let me try a different thing. Let me adjust something and take another crack at it and see what happens then. So maybe the first time I'm a little wide of the target, and then I adjust something and I'm a little bit wider, like, okay, I went in the wrong direction there. Let me back up, undo that adjustment, try and make a different adjustment instead. Did I get any closer? And if you get the aim right straight on, awesome. You have accomplished, you reached your aim. Usually I find it even more helpful to talk about this in terms of intention, but intention can mean a lot of different things. Aim, I think, is more specifically clear about you are setting your sights on a particular thing. So let's start with that we're going to talk about aims as opposed to goals, because this isn't binary, because life is not binary. One of the things that is strange about goal setting or aim setting, I don't know if that phrasing works. I have to come up with a different term for the process of setting an aim, is that in order to be able to do it, we have to take times, places, things in our life, in our experience, and treat them as though they are discrete from everything else, separate from everything else. In other words, if I say that I want to get in shape this year as an aim of mine, and I don't do that by the end of this year, then I can say, okay, I didn't accomplish my aim. I didn't reach it. But that doesn't prevent me from getting in shape next year. And in fact, if I do, it's impossible for us to say that everything that I did this year didn't enable me somehow to do it next year, right? So many people have heard of SMART goals, and I'll run through them real quick because they're a popular and useful concept, but not always in the way that people think of it. SMART goals it's an acronym, SMART, S-M-A-R-T, for specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and timely. Sometimes instead of actionable and relevant, people will say achievable and or realistic. People jumble up the A's and the R's a lot. But specific means, narrow your scope. It is this thing, not I'm going to be happy is not specific, right? Measurable, meaning I need to know if I'm making progress towards the goal, if I've accomplished the goal. Achievable, excuse me, or actionable, and then relevant or realistic, because they switched meanings depending on which ones you are looking at, means that the goal you're setting, it's believable, that is plausible that you can accomplish that goal, and that if you were to do so, it would mean something to you, right? I can set a goal of I'm going to blink 14 times in the next minute, which would be specific and measurable and achievable and timely, but not really relevant, right? It doesn't accomplish anything that I'm really working on accomplishing. Where am I at? T is timely. Timely means you set a time limit on the goal. And SMART goals are so popular because they're very useful, but they're very useful in organizations. They're very useful for goals that multiple people share and multiple people are working towards together, because it allows for efficient and clear communication around progress toward the goal. So if we as an organization set a goal of, we want to help more people, yeah, that's going to be hard. Who knows what that means? We got to get clear. So SMART goals are useful there. They don't necessarily matter as much when you're talking about aims that you're setting for yourself. Again, partly because it is binary, especially with that timely element, that because you are setting a time limit on it, you either accomplish or don't accomplish the goal by the time that deadline has been reached, which, can feel great if it's a success and feel terrible if it's a failure. But also because a lot of the goals, a lot of the things that we want to accomplish for ourselves are just not that specific and measurable innately, right? That, for example, if I set a goal for myself to be in shape, well, what does that mean exactly? I can say it, right? I can say whether I am or not. Do I want to use weight to measure that? I don't know, that maybe that's helpful, maybe it's not. Our subjective experience can be observed and recorded. And that's really what matters when we're talking about measurement in terms of aims, is that I'm observing what is happening, and then I'm recording that so that I can remember it for later and I can compare it to other attempts, other theories, other operations that I'm trying. So just SMART goals are great when you're working with somebody else. When you're working with yourself, doesn't matter so much. And, well, I was going to get a little, cloying there maybe, and I'll keep it more practical and offer a framework instead. So we talk about aims, not goals. And very quickly, I'll talk about positive versus negative aims, and then I'll get into a specific framework of how to do this and how to structure things for yourself. So positive and negative aims are terms we use around here, and I'm sure other people use them, meaning not good or bad, but meaning positive, meaning the addition of a thing. I'm aiming to have something in my life, in my awareness, in my experience that I don't currently have, or have more of something than I currently have. Negative meaning I want less of something than I currently have, or I want to go from having it to not having it at all. Negative aims are automatic. Human beings, by the nature of how we function, we develop negative aims every time you experience something harmful, unpleasant, painful, uncomfortable. Every single time that happens, the very nature of what those words means, what that experience emotionally or otherwise is that I don't like this. I don't want this to happen anymore. So just by going through life, we will develop negative aims. We all have them. We have tons of them. Many of them are very, very much universal, but many of them get much more specific. Positive aims don't happen automatically, only because, not because it's some ethical or, philosophical, reaching for good is more difficult than avoiding evil or anything like that. It's just because positive aims are about wanting something that you don't currently experience. So we can envision and imagine things that we don't currently experience, having more of something or having something that we don't currently have, but we have to set an intention. We have to set time aside in order to do that, because we won't just observe those things throughout the course of our day. It doesn't happen automatically. And the truth is, especially in our current American culture, hustle culture and whatever, starting with school and basically throughout the life, most people are so loaded down with negative aims that are so difficult or impossible to accomplish that they spend all of their resources on that. And you have no resources left over to sit and think about, dream about what are the things that you want. It's not easy to do. It's not easy to find. And it is a skill And if you don't get to practice that skill, if from the age of 5, if at the age of 13, you're in school 8 hours a day, and then you go home and you got to do homework for a couple hours, and you got to like make sure to keep up on your household things that your family does and meet with your friends so you don't let them down, blah, blah, blah. Mostly, and actually there's some really interesting philosophical stuff on here, but I'm not going to get super into the philosophy today, at least not yet, around mimesis and desire and how do we even, how do our brains come to want something? But anyway, mostly we're spending the vast majority of our resources doing the things that other people have asked us to do, other people have told us to do, other people have shown us by their actions and what they're doing that they think are important to do. And mostly we don't accomplish all of those things. We spend everything we've got trying to get it, and we still fall short. So we don't have any free resources left over to say, now that I've accomplished everything that everybody wants me to do, what do I want to do all on my own here? And as a quick side note, I don't intend that to come across as, focus on what you want for yourself, because wanting other people to be happy with what you've done is something that you want for yourself, even if the thing that you do because they've asked you to do it is not something you enjoy or care about. You're doing it because you care about their opinion. And sometimes that's only because they have power over you. Sometimes you respect them and want them to, think well of you. But yeah, a lot of times it's just your boss is going to be upset if you don't make it to work on time, right? So we have to set time aside for positive aims, and we always want to make sure that we're focusing as much as possible on positive aims, because negative aims, as I mentioned before, are unaccomplishable. It is impossible, for example, if you set a negative aim, as we all do, to avoid pain. Oh, pain sucks. I don't want to feel any pain. Yeah, well, it's going to happen. You're going to feel pain. You cannot predict everything and accommodate for everything and make every correct move in advance, knowing what will come next to make sure that you never experience pain. So the problem is that you can pour every bit of resource that you have, every ounce of time and energy and attention and awareness and money and social capital and all the resources you have into these things, and still you'll sometimes fail them. And that's okay, because that's how life is. We have the negative aims. We're all going to fail them sometimes, but there are better and worse ways to approach that. Mostly in terms of resilience. People will often think that, for example, if I am trying to quit smoking cigarettes, which I don't smoke, so, I'm talking about this from the outside, but it's generally like a pretty widely accepted negative aim, if I set an aim to not smoke cigarettes anymore, I can't call that aim accomplished until the moment I die if I've not smoked cigarettes from when I set the intention, set the aim, to when I die. And not only can I not call the goal done, and therefore I have to constantly, keep my awareness on it, but it takes vigilance, meaning that I have to be paying attention. I have to be putting energy toward watching out for signs that the negative aim might be about to come. If I'm trying to avoid pain, which again, we all are, then I have to be watching out for, is that a thing that might mean that some pain is coming potentially? Is that a thing? It's constant vigilance, and you're going to miss things. Someday, sometime, you're going to be tired. You're going to make a prediction that is wrong, and you're going to end up somewhere, back to our smoking thing, where everybody around you is smoking. And it becomes really, really difficult to say no, because you're seeing it and it's smelling it and everyone's having a good time and they're offering it to you and it's just so easy and you're tired, and so you smoke. That happens, right? That's, again, you're going to feel pain, for example. But if you respond to that as a failure by saying, oh, damn it, I did it. I was trying to avoid the thing and I didn't avoid it, then you're going to feel like a failure. And what's even worse is the longer you go, the worse you'll feel. If I go 2 weeks without smoking and smoke, I'll be like, I was doing so well. Shoot, I got to start over. If I go 20 years without smoking and then smoke, I'll be like, I can't believe I threw all that away. What is wrong with me? All that hard work, right? Because people talk about resilience in terms of stubbornness. Really, what they mean is don't change your aim no matter what. No matter what suffering it costs you, no matter how much resources, what it takes from you in order to make progress towards it, you keep going anyway. That's what resilience is, which is a very brittle and fragile form of resilience. Resilience is important, but resilience is about adaptability. meaning that you can maintain the same aim while attempting different theories, different operations of how to get there. If I'm saying I don't want to smoke a cigarette anymore, then I try some stuff, right? I get rid of all my cigarettes and my lighters, and I tell all my friends, don't let me get one and whatever. And then when the time comes that I smoke, that means that whatever I tried to set that up was limited. I missed something because of course I did, because I can't predict the future. If I'm stubbornly resilient, if I have brittle resilience, then I feel terrible and I beat the crap out of myself in my head, and it's awful and makes it honestly pretty easy to just say, you know what, never mind, I'm giving up on this aim. But if it's adaptability, then I say, oh, okay, I thought that would work. It did work in such and such way, but it didn't work in this other way. So what change do I need to make in order for it to be better now? And if you're looking at it, if you're approaching it in that way, then going 2 weeks before smoking is, hey, I did 2 weeks. And going 20 years before smoking is, wow, I did a lot better this time. 20 years was way better than 2 weeks. Now let's see if I can do even more. Cecil says he likes brittle resilience. I like it too. That's why I've said it a couple of times. Something about it, it's poetic. So positive aims, by opposition, you can deduce what we're going to say is that they're accomplishable. If you're trying to get something, you can get it and be done. I want to, learn how to play guitar. I want to learn how to play the specific song on guitar. If you want to be more in the kind of SMART goal, measurable way, you can get there and then be done. And you might not be. You might get there and enjoy it so much that you're then saying, ooh, okay, I'll keep going. I don't just want to learn guitar. I want to master guitar. But you can still check these things off. You get a sense of completion and accomplishment, and you can stop paying attention. Negative aims, you can never stop paying attention. They just stack up over the course of your life. So setting that time aside to develop positive aims, and we'll talk in a minute here about metrics and why that, and by the way, it looks like Lindsay's having some technical difficulties, and I'm not sure if she's going to be joining at all. But, you got her bio anyway. She's cool. Look her up. Setting those positive aims leads to positive metrics, which leads to observing and processing positive things, what you've accomplished. Because, again, the brain doesn't do that by default. It doesn't happen automatically. We automatically notice problems. That's what a problem is. It forces its way into our awareness because something about it is problematic, unsustainable, damaging, right? But positive things, we don't notice by default. We have to guide our attention to those things. Obviously, we can notice positive things, but we don't do it automatically. And what that means is that after a week, when you look back at that week, you're going to disproportionately remember all of the bad stuff over the good stuff, even though, just maybe a controversial statement for some people, but all of us have way, way, way more positive stuff than negative stuff going on at any given moment. And that is not to diminish or minimize anybody's struggles, but it's to point out that comfort is positive, meaning anything you're not paying attention to is positive. I am not currently paying attention to when the last time I ate is, or when the last time I drank, because I'm not hungry right now. I did eat lunch today, Cecil, don't worry. I am not currently paying attention to the temperature. And of course, as soon as I say these things, I start paying attention to them. But that means that the temperature isn't a problem, which means it's positive, right? So we're always experiencing things that do not cause problems far more than things that do. But we're always noticing things that cause, not always, but usually noticing things that cause problems more than things that don't. So that's positive and negative aim. Go for positive aim, especially with New Year's resolutions, which, by the way, language-wise, I'm curious about the etymology, how we came to that, New Year's resolutions versus New Year's goals or whatever. And I like it. The idea is I'm resolving to blank, because it's action-oriented and it's about what you're doing, not what you get or don't get, right? Of course, we don't really always use it that way. We still set it as like, I'm going to accomplish X or Y, as opposed to I'm resolving to, my New Year's resolution this year was to spend as much time as possible with my family, which is something that I've always been trying to do, But by putting it in language, I'm refocusing my brain, telling it to pay attention to the things that would allow me to spend even more time with my family. To ask questions about, is this really necessary? This thing that I'm doing for work or for whatever other thing that is also important, is it necessary or not? What is the bar that needs to be passed of it's worth doing this, as opposed to being with my wife and 3 young children who are just all awesome. Why wouldn't you want to spend time with them? Anybody who wouldn't, I don't know. You're weird. I'm weird. But not in that way, I guess. That was a weird statement. Before I just get on a loop about weirdness. So here's the framework that I'm going to offer to people as a way to go about looking at what things you want, determining that you're going to intentionally set that as an aim, not just, oh, this is a thing that would be nice, but like, no, I'm actually working towards this. And then how to go about developing and devising ways to approach it. And we start with this. There are aims and there are markers. They're 2 separate things that get confused with each other all the time. Part of the reason they get confused with each other is because you can make an argument that a given specific thing is an aim or that it is a marker, and both arguments can be valid. All of these things are constructs. But the idea is this. The aim is, what is it that I'm actually looking for, that I'm actually wanting? The marker is, what is it that I'm looking at to determine whether or not I think I'm going to get what I want to get or getting closer to what I want to get? So a classic example of this would be weight. That when someone says, my goal is to lose weight, my aim is to lose weight, well, what do they really want? Probably has nothing to do with the number on the scale. Probably is about how they feel or how they perceive themselves or how they believe that other people are perceiving them, or what activities they can do or what things they can wear, stuff like that. But it's hard to say, okay, I want to feel more energy and, feel better about my health. And I want to think of myself as being attractive to other people. So instead we say, well, I think if I lose weight, I will accomplish those things. So we choose weight as the marker. And there's correlations between weight and those things for sure, but it's not one-to-one, and it varies person to person. And obviously this is a big part of the problem with fat phobia and, the way that medicine treats weight and blah, blah, blah. But again, other people are better suited to talk about that than I am. So you can always ask yourself, this thing that I'm setting my intentions on, setting as my aim, if I got just this thing and nothing else that I think is connected to it, just this, if the number on the scale went down, but I still felt the same, perceived myself the same way, perceived other people's perception of me the same way, would I be satisfied? In this particular case, the answer is probably no. And if that's the case, that what you're talking about is a marker. Still useful and valid. You don't have to get rid of it, but just know that it's not really what you're going for. It's what you think will get you there. And moving up and moving down is always possible. We can always, for example, end up saying that the aim is I want to be happy or I want to like my life better. Anything can eventually get up to that. And we can always get more granular and say, if this is my aim, I got to focus in more, get more specific, look at markers. So we can go up and down. As always, it's about utility, not accuracy. So here's the model. I always have this impulse, urge to make things pithy and acronyms and alliterative and blah, blah, blah. So I have an acronym for this one, but I don't like it. I want to come up with a better one. But here it is. It's OATOM, OTOM, I don't know, OATOM, OATOM. OATOM, that's good. OATOM, atom like molecule. There's observation, aim, theory, operation, metric. And yes, I did make sure that they were all nouns, and I didn't intersperse nouns and verbs in there together because I don't know why that stuff matters to me. So we start here. Observation. By the way, this also applies to feedback, getting feedback from people, especially if you're an artist, the first 3 in particular, OAT, observation, aim, and theory. We start with observation. What is it that I am noticing, that I am aware of? And we don't, in this step, we don't make any connections. purely just what am I noticing? I am happy is an observation. I am sad is an observation. I am happy because blah, 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 no longer an observation. Now you're making connections and coming up with theories of what thing leads to what other thing. So observation has to be things that either are currently happening or previously happened, and you are not connecting one thing to another thing, you're just observing it. I'm specifying it that way because a lot of times people will think, oh, observation has to be something that other people can observe, empirical. And empirical observations are great and helpful. But in this case, no, it doesn't need to be empirical. If you, for example, want to have more fun in your life, that's a great aim for you to set. And you would start with observations of, oh, I'm having fun right now, or I'm not having fun right now, or observations of how frequently do I feel as though I'm having fun, or etc. So observation is just your subjective way of describing your experience of the thing. Either the presence of it, the absence of it, doesn't matter. I observed that people laughed when I said that thing, but it wasn't a joke. I observed that after that, I felt embarrassed. Start with observation. Second is aim, and this is where you say what you want to happen instead. And instead is the key word here, because as we talk about all the time, you are finite. Resources are finite. There is a set, we could measure it in all kinds of different ways, right? Like there's not a universal way to measure these things. But you have a set amount of time and a set amount of energy and a set amount of attention and a set amount of awareness. And those things get spent. The time gets spent. It passes, whether you choose to spend it on whatever thing that you want or not. It doesn't matter. It gets spent. So any aim, anything that you want, a negative aim where you want less of something or none of something, or a positive aim where you want more of something or some of something, anything that you want has to come at the expense of something that is currently happening. So it's always instead, not in addition. If you, well, here's one from personal experience, recent personal experience. If you have 2 children and you have a third child, and your aim is to interact with and parent and, take care of that third child exactly the same, to the same extent and in the same ways as you do the first 2, something's going to give somewhere, because you can't, there is no just dig deep and find it. You don't make more time out of thin air, make more energy out of thin air just by wanting something badly enough. So observation first. Aim is what would I want to happen instead? This is also helpful in getting negative aims refocused or reframed into positive aims. So like, I don't want to fight with my kids so much. Okay, well, what do you want instead? What's the aim? What are you going for? Then T, theory. Theory is, what is your best idea about how you could shift the observation, what happened or what is happening, to the aim, what you wish was happening instead. And typically we already have theories about any aims that we are thinking about, like, oh, if only I blank, I could do this, or if that would happen, then it would work. And it's always good to start with, theories that you already have, because you'll come back and revisit this at a later step in the process if those theories aren't panning out for you. If you really have no theory at all, there's another framework that I can share. Cecil, help me remember if there's time and I don't remember to get to it, about the idea to beat. It's how to come up with a theory if you don't have one. So, and like I said before, this is OAT, observation, aim, theory, is the best way to get feedback, especially as an artist, but just generally. Because usually people will skip to their theory when they give you feedback. They'll be like, hey, what did you think of that play I wrote? And they'll be like, oh, you know what? I think you should combine these 2 characters, or it needs more of an arc, or their theories about what you could do to shift what it was that they observed, what they experienced in reading the play, to what they would have preferred to experience when reading the play instead. So by framing it this way, by getting people to focus in on, okay, first, just tell me what your experience of it was. Then tell me what you would prefer your experience of it to have been instead. Then, if you want, you can tell me what your theories are about how I could make it shift from one to the next. We won't get too far into that because we're doing goals today. So theory, and then the second O, operation, which means you take your theory and you turn it into something actionable. The ideal operation is a step-by-step instruction that people could follow without having any contextual knowledge about what you're trying to accomplish or what has come before, and etc. And you will never, ever, it is not possible to have an ideal operation. I'm just setting that so that we know you can go in that direction. Meaning that if my aim is, well, I'll use mine. I want to spend more time with my family, right? Spend as much time as I can with my family. Well, first I have to observe how much time am I spending with my family. Then the aim, how much time would I prefer to be spending with them? Then the theory, what can I do? What can I cut out? What can I be more efficient at? What help can I get in order to get to that aim from the observation? And then if I come up with a theory of, you know what, I just need to cut back at work, or I need to get more support from my brother on this thing that we're doing together, or whatever. Okay, now I turn it into an operation, because cut back at work is a good theory, but how do I do that? That's not an actionable plan. So I create an operation. And an ideal one would be, if we did an ideal operation for, I'm going to do my homework as soon as I get home from school. Okay, well then step one, determine what the homework is. Step two, record the homework in some way that you will be able to access later. Step three, put the resources necessary for it into your backpack. Step four, put on the backpack, blah, blah, blah. Don't need to go that far. In this case, it could be, okay, there's this particular task that I do at work that is time consuming, but other people could do it. And so I will talk to person X about taking over task Y. That's an operation. The reason I talked about the ideal operation so much is because, well, we'll come back to if things are working or not and how to adjust it, but it's helpful in that step of the process. And then finally, M is metric, meaning, okay, what thing am I going to pay attention to determine whether or not my operation, based on my theory, is actually moving me from my observation toward my aim or not? In other words, is this working? If I have been spending an average of, 5 hours a day with my family and I want to get it up to 6, well, I need to start tracking. In this case, the metric would be time per day spent with my family averaged out, right? And I know that sounds scientific, but that's what this is. It's a scientific process. You have no other way of doing it. Nobody does. We come up with ideas, we try them, we see what happens. We get information from what happens, from the observation, from the experience, and then we come up with new ideas of what to try next. So you do that automatically, whether you use this framework or any other framework or none at all. But these kinds of things are intended to help if they are helpful to a person, and mine no more than anybody else's. Mine is not going to be helpful for everyone, but it will be helpful for some people. So it's a thing that you can try. To the extent that it helps because of what we constantly are talking about, that attention is finite, and language and intention guide the processes that determine what you notice, what you pay attention to. So if you scale out your energy, I have 1 to 100, and every morning I check in with what's my energy level at, you will pay more attention to your energy level. You will theorize more automatically without having to try about what things correlate with higher energy and lower energy, and what could I do about those things so that I get more of what I want. So the metric is important. You have to give yourself some way. Oh, hello. I think Lindsay just joined us. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Lindsay. How's it going?
It's going. How are you?
I am good. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties it seems like you've been experiencing.
Oh, all good. I'm traveling, so this comes with the course. So,
well, we're streaming, and everyone obviously is seeing my face right now, but hearing your voice as well. And today I've been talking about resolutions and goals and things like that. So
yes.
I was just sharing a framework with people that they can use for this kind of thing. So I'll just finish that last sentence real quick, and then we can get into this topic together or something else, or chat about whatever.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So just to finish up with the metric, you need to guide your attention to something that allows you to track whether or not your theory is panning out, your operation is working. Is it getting you from your observation to your aim? And if so, great, continue to do it. If not, do something else. It's not a failure to have tried something that didn't work. You got more information about yourself. You wouldn't have come up with that theory, that operation, if you had known it wouldn't work. So now you know more than you used to. Go come up with a new theory. And that's what we were talking about. You cycle back to the theory, the operation, and then keep measuring. So
this is great. How do you suggest, how are people tracking their behavior data? Like, how are people?
Yeah, so that metric piece we were talking about at the end, and I mentioned earlier, I talked about SMART goals and how useful they are, especially in terms of setting goals that are shared and worked toward by more than one person, but that they're not as necessary for an individual. Because observation for an individual, I can observe things that aren't empirical, like my subjective experience. I can observe, I am happy, I am angry, which isn't empirical, but it is important when we're setting intentions and aims for ourselves. But that's that metric piece, is we do want something to be able to track. And yes, I would always recommend tracking it outside of your own head, putting it in a journal, writing it down, putting it in some app or something. But again, it doesn't have to be empirical. It can be metrics of like, if I resolve to have more fun this year, then I can say, okay, I am going to measure how frequently I notice myself smiling in any given day. That's fine, and that's observable in an empirical way. But it can also be that you create a scale for yourself of fun, 1 to 100. How much fun am I having, 1 to 100? And you put alarms on your phone that go off, and when the alarm goes off, you check in that moment and say, how much fun am I having, 1 to 100? Even though it's subjective, it's still a metric that you can use.
That's a great idea, because if the alarm goes off and we're doing something that's not very fun, we will become aware, and then we can actively change it. Or if the alarm goes off and we're having a good time in our tasks, then we can do more of it. So that's a great way.
It's
aware. Yeah,
it's actionable in that moment, like you're talking about, and it also guides attention and awareness, including memory, which derives from those things, so that I will now remember a lot more about what things equate to what level of fun for me. And turns out this thing, because otherwise, like developmentally, in terms of like semiotics, making signs for things, fun and all these other subjective things are binary when you first learn about them, right? I'm either having fun or not having fun. But things that you have fun doing, some of them you have more fun than others. And there's not a way for you to be able to really track that unless you do create some kind of scale, some kind of way for you to observe and track. So it's helpful in the moment, but also over the long term to get more clarity, even if you don't realize some big thing of like, I thought I liked this thing, but it turns out I hate it. Even if it's just, this is fun, this is even a little bit more fun, I guess.
Yeah, I like what you're saying. Each experience is different and can be taken differently. So like, for what came to my mind was, I have to go get gas. And so maybe that's not a fun experience, but if I'm on a road trip with my best friend in life and we stop and get gas and cookies or whatever, then then it's a fun experience. So being aware of the situation and like you said, the scale of fun is what I was getting at with that.
Yeah, and I think there's a good point in the example you used of, there are uncountable, unknowable, innumerable variables that impact literally everything that you ever do, experience, etc. Which is why I keep talking about theories. I'm always saying either theory or story. I'm never saying reason, because we want to look and say, that was fun because my friend was on the trip with me. And that you have a good reason to think that. And it's a theory, because even if it's accurate, it's still limited. There are other variables that impacted how fun it was or it wasn't. Having your friend with you on the road trip and you guys didn't prepare well and ran out of food and the car ran out of gas and you're stuck on the side of the road, like probably not going to be fun, So theories and stories are always limited, even when they're useful. So don't worry, I guess, is what I'm saying about trying to be incredibly accurate or having a perfect understanding of, this is fun because X. You just observe, this is fun. And also, this is another thing I'm noticing at the time, or this is another thing I am aware of that happened before or after. There might be a relationship there. It's a theory. Let's test it.
Yeah, I think that's great. And also, like, observe. Like, that's so important, just to see what's going on around us in that moment and how we feel in that moment. So I love that you brought up observe.
Yeah, we were talking earlier. I say we. I was talking, but there's people here about why I always talk about aims instead of goals, because goals are measured in terms of value. I accomplished it or did not accomplish it, and accomplishing it is good and not accomplishing it is bad, failure. Whereas aim, all we're saying is, this is what I'm going for. Now let's see what happens. Is what happened the same as what I was going for? If yes, cool. If no, okay, now let me adjust and try this and see, did I get closer to my aim or further from my aim? And now I have more information. I adjust and I continue, as opposed to, especially with New Year's resolutions, as opposed to failure. If you say, I'm going to work out 3 times a week this year, the very first time you fail to do that in a week, you're going to say, crap, I failed it again, and you fall off. As opposed to saying, oh, this week I didn't get as close as I did last week. I wonder what the difference was. What can I try differently next week to see?
Yeah, you bring up a great point. What I like to say is, if we have a habit that we don't necessarily like, I don't know, drinking soda or whatever, like, how long have we been doing that? And so if we've been doing it for 15 years, I'm not saying that, changing behavior will take 15 years, but it's important to give ourselves a break. And, like, it took us a while to develop the behavior, so it'll take us a while to do something different.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I often talk with people about that in terms of granularity or specificity, because, like, neurobiologically speaking, and you know better about this than I do for sure, with your background in research, talking about myelination and things like that, yeah, theoretically you do need to do the new behavior exactly as many times as you did the old behavior +1 for the new behavior to become easier to do than the old one, right? The new habit, basically. But one way to kind of short circuit that process is to get more specific. So if every morning of my life, if I want to start jogging in the morning, well, I've had thousands of mornings in my life where I can't make a new habit of jogging unless I did it thousands of times. But I can get more specific and say, okay, I jog in the morning when I have set my jogging clothes out the night before, or I jog in the mornings when I have arranged with a friend to meet for the jog. And then, because if we change the stimuli in that way, then the response to the stimuli doesn't need to become as myelinated as the more general response to the more general stimuli, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. What I heard in there was, making the task a little bit more easier, to go jogging one day with our friend, or whatever, is quite difficult, but to do it every day and to make it a habit, to go jogging one day with our friend is quite easy, but to do it every day to start off with is quite challenging. So what I heard is to make the task easier, set out our clothes and then, do it for a week, or, or say, if we set out our clothes, we go jogging. That makes perfect sense. I think we set ourselves, sometimes we set ourselves up for big tasks, and it's okay to break it down and start simpler.
Sure. Which, again, part of what we're talking about in the aim is, if the closest you get is still a lot farther away than you want to be, then you say, cool, I'm closer than I was before I intentionally set this aim or intentionally tried this thing to accomplish it, even if it's not very much closer at all.
That's beautiful, because then that's also providing, like, a reward, right? Like, I did do more than what I'm not doing my old behavior. I progressed and feeling good about it, because, as the saying goes, if it were easy, everybody would do it.
Sure. And, we talk here about cost and value all the time. And a lot of the, like, invisible problems around goal setting or aim setting, intention setting, whatever, is that it's focused around value primarily. I'm making it more valuable to myself, more important to myself to do the thing. I'll feel better if I do it and worse if I don't than I did before I set that goal. But if I really want to make myself change what I'm doing, bringing the value up is good. Bringing the cost down is also good, and in many ways can be better. So you mentioned things like, I want to stop drinking soda. An easy thing that you can do for something like that is take all the soda in your house and get rid of it, right? That might not be easy because other people might want it, or you might still want it sometimes and blah, blah, blah. But if you take all the soda in the house and move it from where it's been to somewhere new, especially if it's somewhere that's harder to get to, you can still get it, but it's now more costly to get it, which means it's more beneficial not to. Even if it's just as difficult and just as easy to reach, but it's different though, because it's different, you pay attention, as opposed to how you've done it all along, where you just go to the same place and grab it. Now you have to, you'll go there and be like, oh wait, it's not here, which cues you into, oh, I'm grabbing soda. Oh, I forgot I didn't want to do that. And of course you still can, but now you're conscious of it as opposed to it just happening by default.
I like your idea of removing.
I'm sorry, because I can't see you. I'm not sure where there's like delays from tech issues or whatever, but go ahead, please.
I was going to reiterate that I like your idea of removing something from our environment. It definitely makes it easier. And then digging into, why do we drink soda? Is it because we're bored? Is it because we're upset, angry, sad, etc.? And then going down that rabbit hole, so then we can be around soda and not have the urge to drink it.
Yeah. All different theories, any one of which might be useful for a given individual, and you test it, right? Oh, I seem to drink it when I'm bored. Okay, well, let me come up with an operation then to theoretically make it so that I'm not bored as often, or so that I don't have access to it when I'm bored, but could at other times. And then I can see, does it happen more or less, right? We want to keep testing things and trying things. And, economists, business people are on top of this stuff, but a lot of the times therapists and psychologists and whatever, those of us who deal with human behavior, don't pay as much attention to the simple reality of if there's a behavior that you want less of, make it more expensive. And if there's a behavior you want more of, make it cheaper. It won't affect every individual instance, but broadly speaking, the cheaper something is, the more it'll happen, and the more expensive it is, the less it'll happen.
So what I heard from that is the make it more expensive part is to remove the soda from the house. So it's a Friday night, we want soda, it's not there. So then we have to go all the way to the grocery store, do all these things just to get the soda. So that's more expensive. And then to make it cheaper is.
So that's where you would focus on, we talked about, so the model is observation, aim meaning what do I want to happen instead of what I've been observing. So you want to replace that behavior with something, right? And all those theories about, it's because I'm bored. Well, then I want to replace it with something that, alleviates my boredom or gives me some stimulation. It's because I like the taste. I want to replace it with something else that I like the taste of. And then we bring the cost down on those things. So I could leave the soda right where it is, but, I really like that one kind of blended juice that I just never have around. So now I start buying that and making it lower cost for me to choose that. And every time I do that, which will happen more often because it's cheaper, I'm now not going to be choosing the soda at the same time.
Okay, but if that worked all the time, why would, this is just one example.
Yeah.
I understand, but why wouldn't we choose water, over soda? And I know that's just a very specific example, but water is an easy, cheaper option.
Mm-hmm. Because the value still exists as well. We don't only look at the cost, right? So a lot of the theories that you're talking about, I choose soda because I like the taste, or I choose soda because I'm bored, or whatever. Well, water doesn't accomplish the same thing in this hypothetical scenario, right? So even though water is cheaper, as a just kind of broad statement, the cheapest thing to do is to just lay there and not do anything at all. But we don't do that because there's value to things that we cannot get by just laying there, even though that's cheaper.
It sounds like we're on different pages with the term cheaper, because when I think about Yeah, I agree that water and soda do different things to different people.
Well, maybe if I say what I mean by cheaper, that might, facilitate it.
Yes, let's do
that. What I'm talking about is that we have finite resources, that in addition to time and energy, that there's attention and awareness, and I can only notice so many things. I can only be aware of so many things. So when I'm talking about cost, I'm talking about how much of those resources are necessary in order for you to get whatever the thing is. So it could even be that even though physically it takes less time and less energy to get the water, well, it takes more attention and awareness to think of water as the option, whereas the soda is now by default, it's a habit, and therefore I don't have to spend attention and awareness. So it could be that the soda is cheaper. It could be that it's more expensive, but it costs more of my resources to get the soda than the water. But what I'm going for is a certain kind of taste, and the water doesn't provide that for me, or whatever it is.
I see what you're saying. I agree. Yeah.
So we want to manipulate both sides of that equation. If we are trying to change something that we're doing, we can either bring the value up or bring the cost down, or both. If we want to do something more, if we want to do something less, we can bring the value down or the cost up, or both. But generally speaking, people focus a lot on the value. People tend to really try and be like, okay, I'm going to do this. Come on, let's do it. Like pump themselves up. This is important. Come on, don't screw this up again. More frequently than they look at, how can I make this more easier for myself to do, or how can I make this harder for myself to do? So
yeah,
go ahead.
I think that's very important. Taking some fear and anxiety out of task and being kinder to ourselves. So that's what I heard you say. And it's very important for progress and for us to keep going, because times will get hard in everything that we do. And we have to be able to, keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking earlier about resilience, and how I think generally people have a tendency to interpret that as stubbornness. Like, don't give up no matter how hard it is. Keep suffering through it. It's worth it, which I think is a very brittle form of resilience, because it works until it doesn't. And when it doesn't, you break, and it's bad. Versus resilience as adaptability, that, okay, I want this thing. I tried this to get it. Oof, that's terrible. I don't want to do that. Okay, well, I can still want the thing and now try something else in order to get it. I don't have to give up on what I'm going for if I give up on how I'm trying to get it.
That's right. That's right. And it opens up the adventure, the experience to different possibilities. So being able to, some people call it pivot, is very important.
Big in the tech world right now, the pivot. I'm working on a book proposal at the moment, and at one point I was playing with the title of The Perpetual Pivot. Just because the truth is that anything is so complex and completely unique. When we say correlation, not causation, I think a lot of times people think that means unless it's a very strong correlation, it's not causation. No, it means that we can't say this caused that. Because even if, the ridiculous example I use all the time is, if I'm holding this mug and I smack it and it falls and it smashes, and I say, okay, why did that smash on the ground? We'd say, well, because you smacked it, you knocked it off. And that's true. And also, if I had smacked it in exactly the same way, but I was in a zero gravity environment, I know it's ridiculous, it wouldn't have fallen and smashed. If it was made of something different or shaped differently, or if it was being held different, that even variables that reliably precipitate other things. Every time we see X, Y comes next. We can't say X causes Y. We can say it correlates or contributes to at best. So you got to be open to that constant, like, no matter what I know, there's more that I don't know.
Yes, you're so right, Brandon. And your example is not silly at all. It's a beautiful example because it opens us up to more possibilities, and it opens us up to be more aware and more accepting of situations, and not, blaming so much, not blaming ourselves and others, and just kind of going with the situation So you're very good example.
Well, I'm glad it didn't come across as silly, my zero gravity cup metaphor. Unfortunately, we got to wrap up, and I know it's a bummer that there were so many issues and you were only able to join us for the last little bit, but maybe we can have you join again in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And sorry about the errors. Traveling, this is what happens in life.
Yeah, of course. It's good talking to you, Lindsay, and thank you everybody for being here. I'll be back next week, maybe with Lindsay.
Brandon, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks. I'll talk to everybody later.